Good afternoon, almost. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We will get started here in just a minute. We're going to let everybody get in from the lobby. Did say 12 o'clock sharp, so we will go at 12 o'clock sharp. And with that said, it is 12 o'clock sharp. I'm sure we're going to have some folks rolling in here over the next minute or two, but in the interest of time, and I guarantee there's going to be some questions coming from the group and some good discussion potentially, we are going to go ahead and get started. So with that, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of BLD Connections Summer Webinar Series. We're glad to have you with us for today's webinar, Leveraging Lean and AI to Optimize Your Yard. We've got a packed house for this one, so we're going to dive right in. For those of you that I have not had the opportunity to meet, my name is Cody Nurnberg. I'm the president of BLD Connection. It's been my pleasure to serve you for the last 16 years, and I will be introducing our speaker, Mr. Jeff Tweten, and the session here before we get started. Before we do dive in, I do want to take a minute to thank our friends at LBM Advantage for once again sponsoring our summer webinar series this year. LBM Advantage is among the nation's premier member-owned purchasing cooperatives for the lumber and building materials industry. By uniting the buying power of more than 500 independent dealers across 1,500 locations, the organization helps members secure competitive pricing and provides access to hundreds of manufacturers and suppliers, complemented by deep industry experience, business growth programs, and data-driven market intelligence. LBM Advantage empowers its members to strengthen performance, drive profitability, and remain independently successful in a very competitive marketplace. Once again, we are very grateful to our friends at LBM Advantage for all their support of not only the summer webinar series, but all of BLD Connections programs and events. Last but not least, before we turn things over to Mr. Tweten, a couple of quick housekeeping notes before we get started. This session is going to run approximately 45 minutes. With the attendance, we may run a couple minutes over time, but we are going to try to get you out of here within 45 minutes. All attendees have been muted, but you can put questions in the Q&A box or the chat box, and we will address those at the end of the program. We are going to have a couple of polls that we encourage you to participate in throughout the program as well. We will be sharing a recording with all of our registrants after the session, so if you do have to step away, grab a phone call, please don't hesitate. Again, everything is being recorded. All right, let's get started with today's webinar and discussion that combines proven lean concepts and emerging AI tools to help lumberyards improve efficiency, enhance safety, and better serve their customers. It's my pleasure to introduce our presenter and great friend, Mr. Jeff Tweten, co-founder of Lumber Buddy Incorporated and WorksafeWorksmart.com LLC. Jeff brings more than 25 years of experience to the lumber and building material industry and a lean approach to process improvement. Through Lumber Buddy and WorksafeWorksmart.com, Jeff has helped lumberyards of all sizes improve safety, productivity, and profitability through customized process improvement initiatives. Having visited more than 3,500 lumberyards across the United States and Canada, Jeff is passionate about helping organizations build a culture of engagement and continuous improvement. Once again, it is our pleasure to go ahead and to welcome Mr. Jeff Tweten. Jeff, thank you for being here with us today. You've been a great partner and a great friend of our organization for many, many years, and we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So with that, my friend, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Cody, first of all, for the nice introduction. Second, for the opportunity to share some ideas and strategies about how we can create the safest, most efficient, and ultimately most profitable operation that we can using lean process improvement thinking, and also leveraging this great new tool called AI. So what we're really going to be talking about today is how do we harness intelligence intelligently? So, our core purpose today is really to encourage you to take full advantage of the dual intelligence stream that you have already available to you in all of your businesses. You've got human intelligence. You've got a lot of great and talented people on your staff. You're already paying them to do what they're doing. Now what we're going to do today is to challenge you to get them to take the next step, to really fully engage in taking ownership of what they do for your business. And then secondly, we're going to talk about how do we leverage artificial intelligence to make all of our human intelligence that much stronger. So let's look at the definition of intelligence on the screen. It's the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills to solve problems, adapt and continuously to improve performance. So the key takeaway out of this is that, we all have intelligence. The question is, are we using it? And one of the things that we can do is we can drive the metric of revenue per employee. How do we make each employee that we have on our team that much more effective? And that's hopefully the skills that we're going to come away with today. So about a year ago, I gave a talk to the Florida Lumber Association, and the title of the talk was The Power of Questions. And if you're around me very much, you'll know that I ask a lot of questions. I'm always curious about, where people are coming from, how they're doing things, how they can do it better. So basically, the framework for proper questioning is to ask the right question and to ask it to the right source at the right time and in the right way. So the right question really boils down to, how can we probe in? How can we get people's wheels turning? So oftentimes when we suggest something new, people say, well, that won't work here. You don't understand our business. We're too busy. And one of the techniques I like to use is I agree with them. I understand that it won't work here, but if it was going to work here, what would need to happen? How would we need to do that? So it gets them out of this fixed mindset and puts them in a growth mindset of, yes, it's possible. It may not be practical, but it is possible to do some of the things that we're going to challenge people to do. Talking to the right source. Oftentimes I don't see in the lumberyards that I visited full utilization of all the brain power and ingenuity that they have in these yards. I always say that there's a MacGyver in every yard I visit. It's interesting to see all of the little homemade apparatuses that they built to try and make their jobs a little bit easier and safer. So how do we tap into that? It's by asking the right source, asking the people that are actually taking ownership over that part of the business that they're doing for you. We need to ask it in the right time. And the right time is before the process has started. So we're going to be talking about an AI first policy, but I'm going to also say that we need to be using lean process thinking ahead of time as well, and then asking in the right way. Framing your question in such a way that people feel psychologically safe to be able to speak up and to let them know the ideas, share the ideas with you that you have. So if you don't, one of the things that we'll learn when we start to get into the AI side of this is writing prompts, which is really just questions that you're posing to AI. And John Marshall, who's a good friend of ours and a friend of BLD's, is going to be doing a webinar next month on September 10th talking about AI. And John is a veteran of the industry. He was with Wilson Lumber for a number of years and did great things with that company, took retirement, but then became so excited about what AI was going to be able to do that he's working with a group called AI Growth Partners. And so anyway, I say all that to say, John's always one step ahead of me. So I told John, I said, I'm learning to write prompts better, and it's helping me to learn to ask questions of our team more. And he said, well, I don't write prompts anymore. And I said, what do you mean you don't write prompts anymore? He said, I have AI write my prompts now. I said, John, you're always one step ahead. So if you're really looking at cutting edge, I suggest that you go ahead and register for that September 10th event and really pay attention to what John Marshall has to say about how AI can be used in your operations. So the power of questions. So the subtitle of that talk that I gave was, if you're going to grow your business, you need to get your RAS in gear. And hopefully you didn't mishear me, because what I was talking about was the RAS, the reticular activating system. And that is really what questions our brain is willing to process. So the RAS is located on your brainstem, and it basically dictates what thoughts get conscious thought. So the way I explain it is, if you've ever bought a new car, and I just bought one, once I decided on that car, now all of a sudden, every place I look, I see that car. They were always there before, but they were never in my RIS, in my conscious, sight. So one of the tools and one of the techniques that we need to use is we need to be able to implant within your employee's RAS system the 8 wastes of lean. So we can start to be acutely aware of the waste that exists within our operations. So when you train your employees to look for waste, their RAS system automatically highlights operational frictions within their mind. And now, rather than being passive observers, they become proactive problem solvers within the yard. So RAS is a very interesting concept. It's the bouncer, that is really dictating which thoughts get in and which thoughts don't. So we're going to talk today about leveraging lean for the human intelligence to really take full advantage of that. And we're going to talk a little bit about revenue per employee. So this is a metrics that I like to see people use within their business. And the reason being is, if we can do more with less, that's all of a sudden when the margins get bigger and the dollars, are at a point where we can share them a little bit more. And again, we're already paying for the people that we have, those frontline experts. So why not go ahead and empower them with some lean tools that they can take advantage of to cut out the waste and drop that to the bottom line. I always say we'll spend a lot of money sending people around to sales trainings. And when we sell $1, we get to keep the margin, whatever that happens to be, 20 cents, 30 cents out of the dollar. But when we save $1, we get to keep the entire dollar. So I'd like to suggest to you that spending the time, money, and effort to train your folks on lean process improvement to help them eliminate waste within your operation is going to pay big dividends for you in terms of your bottom line. So what is lean? Sometimes when I'm talking to lumber folks, I'll say, do you guys use lean? And they say, well, that's what our lawyers handle all of that. And I said, no, we're talking about 2 different liens, not a lien on a property. We're talking about lean manufacturing or lean process improvement. So lean is basically defined as the systematic method focused on relentless elimination of non-value added activities or waste within the value stream. And value stream is something that we'll touch on a little bit later because it's super important. Value, by definition, is any action or process that a customer is actually willing to pay for. Okay, so we can do a lot of things, but if the customer is not willing to pay for it, it's not value. It's basically contribution on our end. Waste is any activity that consumes time or money or effort, but doesn't add any value. So the ultimate goal is to maximize customer value while utilizing the least number of resources that we have. So lean was developed by Toyota in its beginning, really out of necessity because they didn't have a lot of money to spend on items. They couldn't afford the waste. And they basically were able to identify 8 wastes that exist within any operation, whether you're talking about manufacturing, hospitals, banks, your home. I mean, all of these 8 wastes are present in those, and we'll go through them in just a minute. And you might think that, well, Toyota is a manufacturer and they manufacture cars. They really don't have anything to do with what I do in the lumber business. But I would suggest that we're all in the same business because we're all in the same business of converting products and services into cash as quickly and efficiently and as profitably as possible. So whether you're selling cars or you're selling 2x4s, basically you're in the same business. So we're going to go to our first poll question. And so I'd like to know kind of who we're dealing with as a group. So poll question number 1 is, are you practicing lean process improvement in your company currently? And, you can go down and I think it's probably coming up on a polling card to go ahead and participate in this. Just tap your answer and submit it. But basically, are you? Yes. Are you? No. Hey, I'd like to, but I just don't know enough about it. And Connie or Cody, if you can kind of weigh in on what the results of that was once the poll is complete, I would appreciate it.
Sure, they're coming in, Jeff. Right now we're at 52% are, we would like to, but not yet. 38% no, 14% as a yes. So,
Sweet. So we're talking to the right group, right?
yep.
So I had mentioned the value stream, and this is one of the key concepts of lean. And what it does is it opens up our eyes to the 30,000-foot view, and it helps us to understand that basically we're not victims in this situation. We do have some control over the boundaries outside of our four walls of our business or outside of the boundary lines of our business. If we're asking the right questions and if we have the right partnerships with vendors, basically we need to be talking upstream, where we're actually the product's being built, the inception of that product, and having a voice in how it's being delivered to us and how we can deliver it on to our customer. So the value stream gives us the opportunity to reduce waste at all points in the process. And too often times, I think we take a victim mentality of that's the way it came in. If we're having problems, we need to communicate back to our vendor partners, hey, this is creating an issue for us. And I didn't put this in the slide, but I think it's very relevant. So I was at a LBM Strategies conference, and John Vaughn had talked about a simple, very simple exercise called I Like, I Wish, I Wonder. And we adopted it within our group. So every year in January, I send out an email asking our vendor partners, what do you like about working with us? What do you wish was different? And what do you think we could do if time and money wasn't a constraint? Are there some stretch goals that we could be doing in our operation? The more that we can work as a team on the value stream concept, the more likely we are to be able to eliminate waste within this process. So again, I applaud the folks that have a great working relationship with their contractor base, because again, it shouldn't be adversarial. It should be, we're all in it, united around this common enemy of waste, because waste costs us all money, costs us all time. So the 8 wastes that they identified that Toyota identified, can be remembered in an acronym downtime, because waste often causes downtime. And so the D in downtime is defects, the O is overproduction, the W waiting, the N non-utilized talent, the T transportation or excess transportation, the I is inventory or excess inventory, M is motion, excess motion, and the E is extra processing. So what do those look like? What do those wastes look like in lumberyard? So the D basically stands for defects. In a lumberyard, it might look like damaged boards or damaged a door, a broken window, which now we're going to have to reorder, and now it's going to slow down the process. So if we can eliminate that from happening, then all of that value flows through to the customer. Incorrect lumber grades or products that are picked, miscutting of material, inaccurate delivery tickets, all of those things probably happen in your operation over time. So, what's the result of that? Well, we're having to repick orders. We're having to do return trips to the job site, write credit memos. And ultimately, our customers are frustrated because we're not delivering on the promise and the value that they expect from us. So the next waste that we see in operations is the O, or overproduction. Pre-picking loads days too early, which are basically just cluttering the staging lanes. Cutting stock lengths before the order is confirmed could be a big mistake. Tying up staging space, increased chances for weather damage. All of these things add costs or diminish the value, but they're not bringing any value. The W in downtime is waiting, and we see a lot of this in the 3,500 yards that I've been able to visit in the 26 years we've been doing this. Drivers waiting on paperwork, yard staff waiting on dispatch sheets, load builders waiting for banders or other equipment. Waiting is dead time where labor costs compound and zero value is generated. So waiting doesn't do anything. And one of the ways that we can combat waiting is doing cross training, making sure that we have the right tools in the right place at the right time, but several ways to combat all of these wastes. So the N in downtime is non-utilized talent. It's ignoring our, crew's suggestions on how they would make their job easier or better. It's keeping experienced staff just basically doing, a task without really challenging them to grow the business. So the greatest waste is really paying people for human intelligence, but not using it. And there's a lot of experience locked up in the brains of your folks. So really building a culture of continuous improvement is probably one of the best things you could do for your operation. The T in downtime is transportation, moving lumber stacks multiple times across the yard before loading, inefficient delivery or truck routing. Every unnecessary move creates not just wasted time, but wear and tear on your vehicles, fuel costs, and risks of damaged material. And I probably saw the most extreme example of this when we were doing a project out in New Jersey, and we were working with some folks and having conversations, and they had told us the story that they had pulled an entire house package and delivered it to the job site 40 miles away, only to find out that that job had been delivered 2 weeks earlier. They had delivered that job 2 weeks earlier. So they had to return the full load back. They had to take the time to go ahead and restock everything. And, that's a pretty tough lesson to have. And to me, that spells waste with all capital letters. But believe it or not, in sharing that story with other folks, I heard similar stories, maybe not to this extreme, but similar stories of bad processes and miscommunications really costing companies a lot of money. We need to be able to eliminate that. So the I stands for inventory or excess inventory, slow moving product, maybe buying something that a specific customer wants, and then that customer's not taking it. So you're basically storing it. You've paid for it and you're storing it on your time. The other problem that I see with this is oftentimes if we bring things in too early, we're not communicating to the yard staff that that's not going to move for a while, and giving them the benefit to go ahead and stage it in an area that's not going to be in the way. The M is excess motion, yard staff walking excessive distances, and then whether that's to get information, to pull paperwork, or whether that's because you don't have enough tools in the right places for them. But excess motion is something we see quite a bit of. And then extra processing, manually re-entering paper tickets. This extra processing thing we see a lot inside the stores, where we have a lot of redundant work that if we really asked ourselves, is that necessary, or could it be changed or combined in some way? There's a lot of opportunity to reduce the amount of processing that we do, and turn things, into a much simpler process improvement. So building a lean culture comes really down to this simple equation. Empowerment equals safety, increased safety, ease of doing business, and greater profitability. So when every team member uses their human intelligence daily, you get a safer yard with less clutter, easier jobs, less fatigue on your folks, and ultimately a more profitable operation with faster turnarounds and better customer service. But in order to get that benefit, you need to create, in order to get the benefit of lean, you need to create an environment for lean to thrive. Okay. And this is an environment where we learn from mistakes, we don't punish them. And another great operator, a fellow by the name of Matt Simonik, we were talking about how do you handle issues or problems within your yard, and how do we learn from them? How do we build better processes? And Matt told me that they use the MPP method. And I said, I've never heard of that. I don't know what you're talking about. And he said, basically, first we look in the mirror. When there's a problem, we look in the mirror and say, what did I do to cause the problem or make the problem worse? Secondly, we look at the process. What in our processes or lack of processes either caused this mistake to happen or allowed it to happen. And then we look at the person involved in it, lastly, and say, okay, what did they contribute, and how do we need to train them to make sure that that mistake doesn't happen again? How do we fix the process? How do we train the people? And how do we, ourselves become more accountable for great results. So that's talking about people. Now let's kind of switch in and talk about physical setups within this, and then we're going to get into some of the tools of Lean. So one of the items that we promoted for this webinar was called the Golden Zone. And the Golden Zone is really, it represents the highest value space in your yard or in your store. It's critical that it's laid out efficiently and that you've got good processes for replenishment and you totally understand the value of that real estate. Okay. So it's where the largest gains will come. Controlling the use of this space is the key to the success of your backyard operation and, frankly, the key to the success for your internal operations. We need to be mindful of what a golden zone can do. So applying thinking, lean thinking, and principles to this layout will have an oversized impact on the efficiency of your yard. And so there's a lot of things that come out of it, and you can see on this graphic, efficient picking, high throughput, optimal resources. That's by putting high volume or velocity type items in the right location. Typically yards will stack lumber 8 foot, 10 foot, 12 foot, 14 feet, but we also know that, there's much more demand in certain sizes. So can we set the yard up in a way where our high demand, high velocity items are in a specific area? So we could spend the whole webinar just on the golden zone and how to set it up. We don't have time for that, but I wanted to introduce the concept. If you're looking for some outside help to do that, if you don't understand how to do that, I know David Wells is somebody that we've worked with and that BLD has had at a number of their events as a speaker. Clint Darnell from CT Darnell is also somebody who I always say can put 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag. There are resources out there that could help you take full advantage of some of these lean principles and some of the new apparatuses that are available. And one of the greatest resources you probably have is BLD Connection and Cody, because many of the folks that could help your business are probably in touch with your association and want to be a part of it and are looking for connection with you. So if you have a challenge, I'd reach out to Cody and the group and ask, hey, is there somebody that does this? And if there's enough interest, possibly they'll build a webinar around that to where everybody's learning at the same time. So, let's take full advantage of all the relationships that we have with our vendors, with our associations, with our friendly competitors to build a safer, more productive workplace. So the foundations of workplace efficiency, these are some of the tools that Lean brings to bear. And so this first one really comes into play when you're talking about the golden zone, and it is a 5S or a 3S process. So 5S basically stands for sorting, setting in order, shining, standardizing, and sustaining. Okay, organizing the workplace for maximum efficiency. So if you walked out into your yard right now and looked at what I would consider to be your golden zone, A quality space, high velocity space, what are you going to see there? You need to take all of the items that don't add value and shouldn't be there and get them out of the way through something called a red tag process. Then once that area is clean, now we're going to set in order the items in a pick sequence that makes sense based on all of the intelligence that we have about how our operation works. Then we're going to clean up, we're going to shine, because we want to be able to see if anything gets out of order, right? And then we're going to build standardized processes, SOPs, standard operating procedures to be able to replenish and to pull from those product areas. And then we're going to build a program to sustain it and to continually improve it if there are ways that it needs to be improved. So another tool is standardized work. And what I say here is that we need to study the best and then build process for the rest. And whether that best is in your yard or whether that best is someplace else, we need to set high standards in terms of how we operate, in terms of efficiency and safety. And then visual management. So visual management is really about, if there was a octagon that was red and it didn't have a word on it, most of us would identify that as a stop sign. or a triangle that was yellow, even if it didn't have a word on it, we would identify it as a yield sign or some kind of danger. We can utilize both shapes and colors in visual management within our yard as well, and Lean will help you do that. The number 4 tool is Ondon, and this is probably geared more towards factories than it is for, the practical application for our yards. But basically what it's talking about is making sure that we have a way for people to signal when they've been able to find a defect or a problem, that we can stop the process, communicate upstream and downstream as to how that's going to affect the situation, and then rally some resources in to go ahead and fix the process or fix the issue that you're having. The next tool's up. This is one of my favorite ones, and that's the 5 whys. So 5 why is nothing more than asking why 5 times. So problem, we have a truck that is leaving the yard and it's got 3 sheets of OSB on it, and that's not a profitable load. So why are we taking a delivery out with 3 sheets of OSB? We need to find that out. Why did that happen? Well, we were 3 sheets short on the last order. Well, why did that happen? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? So we are not fixing the symptom, but we're drawing back to find out what was the true root cause of the problem. Poka-Yoke is an interesting foolproofing of processes. So a Poka-Yoke example, I'll give you a couple of them. One, in a machine shop that we were working with, there was a way to put a tool in the right way or the wrong way, and they ended up putting a smiley face sticker on the right way. So if it was put in correctly, you would see the smiley face. If it wasn't, you knew it was put in wrong. And a more common one is when you're filling up with gas, you will have a hard time putting diesel in your car that takes unleaded because the nozzle sizes are 2 different sizes, and they also color code it, red for unleaded, green for diesel. So they're using both visual and physical Poka-Yokes to avoid making, a costly mistake. Kanban is basically a visual pull system that aligns inventory with actual consumption and prevents overproduction. So Kanban could be as simple as if you're using shrink wrap. Once I pull the last shrink wrap, or maybe the second to the last shrink wrap out, there's a marker in there that tells me here's where we order it, here's how much we order, here's what we paid for it, and maybe I need to take that card in to the operations manager to reorder that product so we don't run out of consumables that we use in the yard. So Kanban is a very useful tool. And then point of view storage. So point of view storage, a simple way of looking at it in a lumberyard would be when lumberyards used primarily steel banding, oftentimes they had a single banding station, but they would buy a pallet of banding, which was 12 coils of strapping. They're using one, and they have 11 that are collecting dust and rust over in the corner. So today, point of view storage, especially with some of the non-steel banding that is very lightweight, they can be used out in the yard with forklift mounted dispensers or wall mounted dispensers. So all of that inventory that you've already paid for that is, sitting in a warehouse can actually be put out and in use in your operation. So point of use storage, again, a mindset tool that you need to file away. These are a couple of larger concepts. One is called value stream mapping. Value stream mapping is basically taking an entire process. So if we looked at the entire process of from first meetings of a house all the way through the delivery of the last material, we would be able to value stream map on Post-it notes, each one of the activities, and then be able to look at each activity and try and either reduce the amount of time that it takes or change the order that it's done in to, again, build more flow within the system. And then single piece flow, I've yet to really find a great application for it in lumber, but it's basically, rather than batch production, it's looking at single piece production to where you don't have a lot of money tied up in inventory that's work in process. So that's one that we're still working on, trying to figure out how to get the most out of that. So I talked about traditional lean. The lean that we really promote is something called 2-second lean, and it came from a book written by a fellow by the name of Paul Akers. And to me, it's more of an Americanized version. So traditional lean, it's fairly complex. It uses a lot of Japanese terms. It's large and frequent Kaizen events or larger type events, heavy top-down management focus, and it's hard to sustain over time. 2-second lean is really a simplistic individual approach. We're teaching people to fix what bugs them. We're giving them a daily challenge to find 2 seconds of improvement in what they do, the part that they own for us in our business. It is frontline employee driven, and it builds out in a continuous culture and starts to build momentum. And you're doing it every day through daily morning huddles and practicing the 5S or 3S habits that you have. So if you've not ever been exposed to 2-second lean, I highly recommend that you get and read the book. Again, we have copies available. If that's something you're interested in, reach out to us at the end of the event here and we'll get you connected. So the simple 3-step process that we're talking about is let's activate our RAS system with those 8 wastes to where people now are on the lookout for waste within your operation, teaching them the tools to fix what bugs them to where they're seeing immediate, an immediate gratification, because what they're doing is actually fixing their situation and helping them to work better and safer and smarter and happier. And then, getting the results of a safer, more productive, and ultimately more profitable yard. So as I said earlier, we do have 3 different worksheets that are available: the 8 wastes, the 5S process, and then fix what bugs you. So if you're interested in that, my email will be up after the end of the presentation. So let's talk about artificial intelligence. So supercharging lean through artificial intelligence. So human intelligence handles the physical workflows and the bottlenecks and the customer relationships, but AI can process massive amounts of data. And it generates reports, then it predicts demands, then it automates repetitive tasks. Lean will help you on your physical layout. Lean will probably help you in your relationships, but AI is really going to drive the acceleration of the improvements that you see within your yard, because it's making your people better, and in turn your people are making your AI better. So we've come to the poll question number 2. So how would you characterize your use of AI in your company? What is AI? We use it every day. We don't use it and don't plan to, and we would like to, but not yet. So again, Connie, if you'll give us an indication of kind of where everybody's at.
Right
Yeah,
now,
we're just
Jeff,
waiting for people to, you got it, Cody?
I got it. Yep. They're on their way in. We've got 64. Oh, no, never mind. 56. Roughly 60% are using it every day. About 5% are not using it, and the remainder, don't use it, don't plan to, and then the remainder are we would not like to, or we would like to, but not yet. So about half are using it, half are not, Jeff.
Okay. So actually, you guys are on the cutting edge. I participated in AI events for folks out in California, and there's less usage out there than there is here in the Midwest. So I applaud you for that. So basically, and you probably know this, if you're already using AI, all of the AI talks that I've heard basically caution against, well, what happens if our information gets out there? So establishing an AI policy for the use in terms of data security and customer privacy and factual verification, I think you need to have that on the books before you really get started and encourage your people in doing that. And if you don't know where to start, ask AI. Come up with a AI use policy for my lumberyard. Here's what I'm concerned about. Here's the things that I want to make sure happen. Okay. And then once you have that policy in place, you can do like our company and have an AI first operational policy. So basically in our group, when we give you a task or when you take on a task, the first thing I want you to do is say, how could I use AI to do this task faster, safer, more efficiently, more profitably? Because again, if we don't build the mindset of using AI, we'll never get its full capabilities, and it's ever changing and it's getting better every day. So used correctly, you know, it eliminates paperwork, it can draft proposals, it makes us all look a little bit smarter. We can analyze tremendous amounts of data. Used incorrectly, you know, it could be leaking information, could be giving us bad information, right? Could be sending unverified messages out. But don't fear that. If we set it up correctly on the front side, if we partner with the right people, you know, there's folks out there, Chris Rader at Rader Solutions, different ones that Cody knows, that if you have questions about this, again, I would direct them to Cody and Connie and say, hey, can you get us more information? Because we want to use it. We're just a little bit concerned about how to use it. So again, this is just telling you the difference between free models and paid models. But overall, my cut is don't use free models for anything to do with business. That's my opinion. So we're going to go through some ways that we can use it in each one of the departments. So sales and service, you know, instant quoting assistant converts sloppy handwriting, and I've got sloppy handwriting, and it will go ahead and scan my notes in and put it into text form and clean it up very easily. Polished communications, most certainly. I look a lot smarter having AI, my friend AI, helping me write all of my emails. Cross-selling opportunities to be able to do some research on that and ask for strategy on sales. Basically, if we're using it in yard and inventory, again, optimizations of high velocity material, it can analyze what's coming in and out of our operation. It can also, you know, do some forecasting, but I say all of this needs to have human supervision. You need to be able to look at it and say, yes, this is a helpful tool to me, but it's not the end all cure all. I'm still responsible ultimately for, you know, what I'm doing. Dispatch and logistics, you know, dynamic route optimization. And a lot of these features are already incorporated into your ERP. So I would lean heavily on your ERP providers to help you understand what are the capabilities of the system. Am I using all the capabilities that are available to me? Smart load sequencing, drop verifications, you know, when you drop a load at the job site, making sure that that's been cataloged and that you're taking full advantage of that. Estimating and purchasing, blueprint takeoffs. There are models that are doing it today, maybe not as well as a human, but it's ever improving. And again, what I would say there is that there's always going to be a need for people that can do takeoffs. But by utilizing AI, now their production goes up dramatically because the computer can do so much of it. Basically, the blueprint reader becomes more of the audit expert to make sure that it has been done correctly. And that also with all of that data, we can continually get better and better at our material takeoffs and reduce the amount of pickups that we have from the job site, mill price comparisons as well. And then safety and HR. So safety analysis, you know, it can analyze different, you know, if you had an incident, it can help you work through that. SOP and onboarding. We just did training on 2 different salespeople. I had assessments on both of them. I pulled those into Gemini and said, write a training program based on these people's, you know, learning styles on strapping and lumber buddy sales and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of ways that we can use this to leverage, you know, what we're doing. Writing standard operating procedures, again, a great way to do that. But all of this needs to have human involvement and human oversight. AP automation, you know, it'll write collection letters. It'll help look at trending in terms of people that aren't paying or, you know, their purchase order sequencing, all that type of stuff. One of the ones that I thought was fun is I took a couple of different photos and said, based on OSHA safety standards and common safety practices, please identify any safety concerns or violations in these 2 photos. And you can see the results that it picked out of each one of these. And the photos may be grainy to you, but I can tell you that AI is seeing them crystal clear in being able to identify a number of different violations or having suggestions on how to improve that setup. So then the other thing I love about this is you'll see the letters in red. Would you like specific recommendations on corrective actions and assistance in drafting safety inspection checklist for this facility? Absolutely would. Yes, please do that. And again, this happens oftentimes with AI where it's always prompting for a logical next step, always, and most of the time ahead of me on what I would like to have. So the last thing that I'd like to do is really encourage you. It's actually not the last thing. I've got one more slide, but extending into the value stream. As I said already, your ERP systems basically are already integrating a lot of this AI. This is a slide from a webinar that was done by LBM Journal last week. I think it was last week with ECI Spruce. And what he was demonstrating here is that in this dashboard, each one of the dashboards has an AI prompt that will tell you, give you a recommendation on how to use that information that is contained in there and suggestions on how to improve performance. So again, I couldn't stress enough, get with DMSI, get with ECI, get with Epicor, whoever you're using, find out what the capabilities are and take advantage of those. Okay. So if you don't know where to start, ask AI. It's going to have an opinion. It's going to be able to tell you. And, so again, I don't know that we're long. I think we're still within our constraint, but basically we need to tap into the workforce that we're already paying for. We need to eliminate waste through lean, and we need to harness this power of AI. Don't be afraid of it, but let's harness it for the use to grow our businesses. So again, I want to thank Cody and BLD for the opportunity to share some ideas with you about this. And if you want the copies of the 3 worksheets, please email me at my email address, jefft@worksafeworksmart.com. And last but not least, are there any questions, Cody? Anybody have any input?
I'm gonna just scroll through here real quick. We do have one, and I think it maybe came before we got into some of the AI stuff, but just from your experience, Jeff, you go around and you talk to 3,500 different lumberyards over your years, and certainly now with AI being a thing and some a way to be a helpful resource, helpful tool for all of us. Aside from the examples you've given, you got any other best practices or things you've seen where it's like, wow, they used AI, they had a problem, they punched it into AI, and this was the result. Got anything you can share from that end?
I mean, I use it for everything within myself. Shane Sewell is another guy who's really cutting edge with ProTech, and he's going to be doing a 2-hour, well, he's going to give a presentation, but he's also doing a 2-hour workshop at LBM Journal, really, just laying out how he uses it for all of his everything from production to accounts receivable all the way through. So there are some folks out there that are really great early adopters of this technology. Again, if you have the time, and even if you don't have the time, sign up anyway, because they're going to give you a recording of it. I highly recommend John Marshall. John thinks way outside the box, and he is zeroed in on AI. He can give you a lot of examples of that. But if you have specific questions that challenges that you'd like to pose to it, send them to me, and I'll either relate what I've seen in the past, or together, we'll come up with some creative solutions on how you might be able to fix that challenge.
Very good. It is a very powerful tool. We've just used it yesterday, and it was amazing to write a report that. Oh, hold on. Do we get a last minute question? Oh, here we go. Here we go. Do you have documented examples of how AI has improved efficiency for lumberyards, meaning case studies to share? Be helpful in getting buy-in from our teams out in the field that are hesitant to get on board. Additionally, it would be great to network.
Okay. Again, if you'll reach out to me, I haven't documented it, but basically I can put that together pretty quickly, and I'll reach out to some of my friends that are kind of in this same mindset of really championing AI, and give you some solid things. But I do think the more we can, and this is the great thing about associations is, individually we're going to progress at a certain pace, but when collectively we can get together as an association, and Cody and Connie bring in speakers that kind of bring forth some resources that we wouldn't get a chance to take a look at individually. That's what it's all about. But yeah, any of this, and Cody and I communicate quite a bit. So if you have questions, if there's things that you think would be helpful, by all means, communicate them to us, and we'll get you the information that you need.
We'll definitely put you in touch with the individual that asked that question, and
Okay.
I'm sure you guys can go back and forth. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing more and more of it, certainly. Yeah, why sit here and try to skin the cat, see what AI has to say before you get the knife out? That's kind of
Absolutely.
the way we've been looking at it. So I'm seeing folks be successful with it. So, well, with that, Jeff, unless I see any other questions pop up, I'll give it a couple seconds here while we go through our closing. But thank you very much, as always, for your partnership and for sharing your expertise and practical insights with us today. Your presentation certainly highlighted how lean principles and how AI can work together to reduce waste, improve safety, streamline operations, and create a better experience for both your employees and your customers. Again, thank you to all of our attendees. I know we ran a little bit long today, but we will happily we appreciate you sticking with us. And with that, please join us, as Jeff has alluded to a couple times, for our next session on August 20th, and again on September 10th. Our August 20th session is going to be the Leadership Playbook, building teams that stay and perform. And then, as Jeff has alluded to during this presentation, September 10th, we will have our AI and the Future of Sales Leadership to wrap up the summer webinar series. Once again, thank you to Jeff. Thank you to LBM Advantage for their partnership and sponsorship of the summer webinar series. Again, thank you all for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful afternoon and enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great weekend. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon.
Thanks.